Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Committee on Ordinance for June 29th, 2021. I am the chair, Rebecca LISI, City Councilor at Large. To my left, we have Acting Mayor, City Councilor Terry Murphy, representing Ward 2. To my right, we have Juan Anderson-Burgos, representing Ward 6. And we're joined this evening by Councilors Bartley from Ward 3, at-large City Councilor Joe McGivern, and then online I see, no, everybody else left us. We do have Mike Bissonette here, who is our new Associate Solicitor in our legal department. Welcome, thanks for joining us.
Good advertisement, Mike.
We do have some guests here from different departments, so I would like to entertain a motion that we proceed out of order to item number 5, perhaps.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Oh, and before we go into discussion, I do want to note that Councilors VACON and Hernandez are absent today because they had pre-arranged vacation time for themselves before the meetings for this evening were called. Okay, so item number 5 is an order filed by Councilor Anderson-Burgos that the language in the Holyoke Municipal Code, section 14-5A1A, be removed from the code. The language of this order reads, quote, "A dog may be off restraint if under adequate voice control of a person and that person has a leash in their possession. A dog which does not respond to commands of the person in control of such an animal is not under restraint." This language, especially if under adequate voice control, is overly subjective and does nothing to protect another person or animal from injury should a dog owner not maintain control of their dog. Under discussion, Councilor Anderson-Burgos.
I mean, it says pretty much, it speaks for itself. But there were several, not just one, but several incidents where another person was injured, and two dogs were in a fight, and one of them died. So it's just reoccurring, and this will help eliminate and possibly any escalation of an interaction with a human and a dog, or a dog and a dog.
Thank you. I see we're joined this evening by Sean Galsovs, which is the director of our Board of Health, Department of Public Health. And we also have Eric Velez, our Animal Control Officer. I'd like to invite Mr. Velez into the chamber to talk with us.
Sure.
So Eric, you're welcome to take a seat over here so we can look at you a little bit more. Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Gonsalves and Mr. Velez, do either of you have some proposed language for us to consider in how to deal with this situation?
Frankly, I think that the easiest way would be to remove Section A entirely. The exception that we had considered previously when this ordinance had been revised in the past, and Eric can speak to that a little more, was discussion of, what about some exceptions for animals that are in a dog park, or certain circumstances where, extenuating circumstances. And we may want to put something in there that would codify that, but there is a mention in this a little bit later that does say that, it says in B that a dog may be off restraint if it is completely confined within a fenced-in area or pen, and we may want to revise that language to say, to include, dog parks or public spaces if they are fenced in. Otherwise, I think it may be a little bit difficult to enforce if it gets too vague, or if there are a variety of exceptions. I think to Councilor Anderson-Burgos' point, the issues that we have had with this ordinance in the past is that a dog being under voice command is really only under voice command until it isn't. And so in some of the situations that we've dealt with, including those mentioned, the animal was, before the time leading up to the incident, not causing a problem. You know, in one instance, the animal was on a porch with its owner, or it was in the yard with the owner. There was no issue. Another dog came up and began barking for whatever reason. You know, it's a dog, it's outside, it maybe smelled another dog, but that dog was in a public way barking on a leash. And then there was an incident where this dog off leash left private property, entered the street, the sidewalk, and ended up biting the other dog. And so it's difficult to make a judgment call for many folks about what voice command is, and then it's even more difficult to sort of enforce that line because in many cases, the incident, you know, it's very difficult to foresee the incident until it is too late. And so I'm not sure that there's another way to codify that without simply removing the provision. But Eric may have a suggestion that he could speak to.
Thank you. Mr. Velez. You want to just hit the button on the bottom so the green light goes on.
Hi, and and I apologize. I just had some really sad news. Yeah, so the state doesn't have much to say about leash law. In fact, under Chapter 140, 174B, it only really sort of talks about, and I've got some sort of handouts that I printed up prior to this. It sort of only really talks about making sure that your dog is confined and or on a leash in rest areas, highway rest areas rather, and it makes no mention of any other place or across the state or in cities or towns in the state. That's pretty much left to each individual city and state to city and town, I apologize, to sort of mandate and regulate on their own. As I maybe previously mentioned in an email, I'm completely for this, taking this verbiage out simply because it makes, for safety concerns, it doesn't make much sense to have this dog, and animals are animals, I completely get that, and leaving them to sort of listen or choose not to listen, and this could cause physical harm or even death in some cases, as you previously mentioned in a case that we had last year, where a dog was, and Sean was just alluding to, where a dog was viciously attacked, unfortunately, and died because of its injuries. Also, the owner at that time was attacked, and subsequent injuries were had. Dogs act and react in certain ways, some better than others. So to think that every dog is going to come back under voice command, absolutely not going to happen. I completely am for this. Now, when this wording was set in place, this was a good argument was said to me by one of the attorneys at the time. Well, what if somebody wants to play with their dog frisbee at the park and such? And then he made another couple of arguments after then that were really compelling. And I said, okay, you know what? That sounds great. I totally get this. But after some of the incidences that we've had throughout the city in the past number of years, and not just number of months, it's important to ensure that folks understand what leash law and restraining of their own animal is, and understand that the cause for concern, of course, and the damage that a dog may do and can do ultimately falls back on the owner.
So we don't have legal language in front of us to consider. I think what we could do is say,
I think what I'm referring to is the actual ordinance itself.
wait, we don't have a version. Oh, you have it.
I have a
Thank
copy
you.
of it.
Yes. Fantastic. And I hope that Mr. Bissonette can follow along with us. So it seems that what we want to do is strike out A1A from section 14-5.
What?
And I'm sorry that there's not multiple copies to share.
This is what the state says.
Correct.
It's pretty self-explanatory, though.
Mhm.
This is what the state says.
Okay, thanks. And then, Sean, you were suggesting some changes. Is it to section B where it talks about confined within a fenced area or pen, or is it further down in, I think?
It was B.
It was B.
It was B. And
Okay.
the section of B that I was referring to is just to Eric's previous mention is that it may be that we would want to say just to include dog parks or other areas that are specifically created for dogs to be off leash. I know that there's the possibility of a new kennel / doggy daycare coming on Main Street, for instance, and I'm not 100% sure what services that he intends to offer there. But if he were to offer, say, dog training classes, there may be some instances there where those dogs are off leash, and that is a public space. And so we don't want to make, for instance, services that he's rendering there, even though it's fenced in, you just want to clarify perhaps that that's allowable, and that being in a dog park is allowable off leash as well, if that's, the intent of the council. And I think that was one of the arguments that Will had made, just to make sure that we're not making it so that dogs can never be off leash. Just clarifying the situations where that is still acceptable.
I'm sorry to jump on, to Sean's point about having dogs off leash, this is not necessarily, or rather in a fenced-in area, this is not to sort of say, oh, if your dog is in your yard, it's got to be on a leash. If your yard is fenced in, it's fenced in, and I think it's okay. It's not necessarily ruled as a loose.
So I think, let me just read the language as it's stated now, and then we can figure out how we want to amend it. So section B says, a dog may be off restraint if it is completely confined within a fenced-in area or pen. So it seems we want to say fenced-in area, comma, pen, comma, dog park, comma, or other dedicated space for, yeah, you might have some better language here. But I mean, the other thing to note is what I'm thinking of is like, community field in a way. It's a fenced-in area. So how do we delineate the fenced-in area? So is it a fenced-in area on a residential property? Or, those are sort of the nuances that pop up.
I think community field is obviously the exception due to the fact that they already have a dog park already fenced in.
Mm-hmm.
So anything outside of that would be considered loose.
But what about Rowan Park? Fences on all sides?
Right, so I think the beginning part of A does say all animals, so just to put this within sort of the context, all animals with the exception of altered cats shall be kept under restraint when in public or outdoors. So that will be untouched if we were to remove the section below that 1A under exceptions. So I think that community fields, the non-dog park area, or Carlos Vega, or any other park, Pulaski, that would still be covered by that initial section where discussed, unless specifically exempted under B. So we could say fenced-in area, pen, or clearly delineated area for dogs to be off leash. It may be as simple as saying specifically stated fenced-in area for dogs to be off leash. And then any other thing that's not mentioned under B, I think would be covered by that initial sentence in the first part of 14-5.
Thank you. Our legal counsel, Attorney Bissonnette, has his raised hand, so we'll recognize Attorney Bissonnette.
Thank you, Chairwoman. The question on this seems to be the distinction between a public and private space. And I think Mr. Gonzalez says it exactly right. That should be the process by which you can delineate and make it less subjective, so that there's a clear distinction between a space that's canine friendly or canine public, the point of phrase. So maybe that's a distinction that you want to draw in the ordinance amendment, and that should be able to withstand any challenges.
And did Sean's language that he just stated, a public fenced-in area specific to, a public area that is specifically fenced in for dogs, for the use by dogs? That feel like it covers it from your perspective, Attorney Bissonnette?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Any other comments from committee members or counselors? Sure, Counselor Murphy.
I mean, I certainly agree with the rationale behind the order, especially as we get it. And I'm assuming the dog that attacked the other dog was on its own land when...
It was on its own property when it started.
Yeah.
It did come off its property.
Secured.
And unfortunately, that dog was on the sidewalk when the attack took place.
Okay. You know, I mean, I know people, and a couple other things. I mean, when I had a dog, I had an electric fence, so technically the dog was fenced in, but not with a real fence, other than the electric fence, and I don't think it ever crossed that fence. Would that be considered under control or not?
It would be considered under a fenced-in area if we want to add that into the ordinance as far as wording. You know, it has to be either specifically fenced-in chain link,
Yeah.
or is an invisible fence going to be sufficient? That's something that could be maybe worded into the order.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that, first, I don't want anybody getting attacked by a dog, and certainly that's, but I also want to make sure when there's areas that can have their dog being loose, but the dog is restrained. And I'll give you an example. I had a chain link fence, and I had a dog that went under the chain link fence and ended up, unfortunately, getting hit by a car. And then I got the electric fence, and I never had that problem again. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure, and you know, someone could have a 1 or 2 acre lot, and their dog's, you know, outside their door. Technically, they're violating that ordinance if it has to be on a leash. So I'm just trying to find if there's a common ground that can keep people safe. That's my goal.
There are certain things that, and folks with a fenced-in yard have called about. You know, how do I make my yard safer? And I go through some things about how to make their yard safer so that their dogs are maybe less likely to roam and or to escape somehow. Some dogs are more escape artists than others, like huskies, and maybe some, like you said, sneak under the fence.
Yeah.
But then there's ways to sort of help those folks and maybe come up with some sort of a plan to ensure that these guys stay safe.
Okay, thank you.
I see Mr. Gonsalve, your hand is raised, but we have Councilor Bartley in queue, so I'll come to you after Councilor Bartley.
Go Councilor Mr. Goncalves first.
Sure.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Bartley. Just quickly, I think that Interim Mayor Councilor Murphy brings up a good point in that we may want to define fence a little bit more clearly. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but perhaps we say, you know, an electric dog fence, you know, a fence of a minimum of, say, 3 feet in height, because fence is a broad and vague term, and there are many decorative fences, you know, chicken wire, there's snow fencing, there's, you know, the small picket garden fencing, there's lattice. And so if we're going to open this up, it may be just worth mentioning what constitutes an acceptable fence if we're discussing private property or public spaces, so that there's not then, you know, someone who puts something very small and says, well, there's a fence in my yard. And it may be as simple as just defining what the minimum conditions are there. And excuse me. What the unfortunate circumstance, just to sort of lay this out, is that sometimes when these attacks happen, they're unpredictable, and they're obviously, you know, no owner intends for, well, in the majority of cases, no owner intends for their animal to cause harm to another person or that person's animal. But there's always the case, you know, the way many of these situations are sort of dealt with is that we have a dangerous dog hearing. And in some cases, the owners will ask for euthanasia. And in one of these cases, where the dog passed away, that was the request that was made, that there was a very strong push for the animal to be euthanized. And the only reason the animal was not euthanized is because that owner took them out of Holyoke, took them to another community where they went into a yard with a 6-foot-high fence, and they went to behavioral courses. But had they chosen to remain and not move the dog, you know, that may have been what happened. And we did agree to euthanize the animal. We never want to see that happen, but if there's repeated incidents, even if they're rare over the course of a dog's life, that may be the ultimate outcome. And so we very much like to see that avoided, and this may certainly do that.
As much as possible, right.
I do want to note that in the definition section of Chapter 14, we do define fenced-in area. It presently states fenced-in area shall mean an area which is completely enclosed by a chain link or similar fence and is accessible by one or more sealable egresses, and which prevents an animal kept within from leaving the enclosed area. So we could add electric in front of chain link or similar material to capture that there. Councilor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, just through the chair to Mike Bissonette. Mike, welcome. The former mayor of Chicopee is here, and Mike, so welcome to Holyoke. This is exciting news. No, yeah, I saw it the first time, Mike. So that's good. I know you know the zip code. We generally have 1 or 2 here. We don't have 6 or 7 like Springfield and Chicopee. So these are just some thoughts to the chair to Mike to consider, because I get the intent of this, and nobody wants to see an animal hurt. So there's that. But the first thing I want Mike to consider before we draft any language, with the language in, not as it reads now, is the city more liable, or is it has more liability, or does it have less liability the way it is now? So I want that question answered. Second of all, if we remove the language, same question. Is the city now more liable? Is there increased liability? I don't know. My third point is private property. Are we now saying that we're going to regulate leashes on private property regardless of whether there's a fence? And if we are saying that, and if we don't enforce it, and then a dog runs off private property because we didn't enforce our own ordinances, and then a dog attacks and hurts somebody, is the city then liable? So I want that answered clearly, because if we're going to start regulating private property, we darn well better enforce it. And then the last point for right now, although I'm going to make one other sidebar note, Madam Chair. The last point, you know, to me it seems like if we're going to have ordinances, they should be kind of proactive. So if there's in a public space, so as Juan mentioned, or as Eric mentioned, the dog went from a porch, private, on the lawn, private, into the public way, not private. So our ordinances could reasonably say any animal in a public way or in a public space, unless there's an exception, shall be on a leash. So, and the exceptions could be delineated, such as the dog park or wherever else you want to say. I don't know what other spaces you want to say, but, you know, I don't know. In the middle of Crozier Field at 5 in the morning, I mean, I have no idea, but there's going to be some limit to it, but you want to do that. Then just this little sidebar statement is, you know, the whole, I mean, I have this language here, but I didn't go ahead and download the whole ordinance, and so it's tough to pull something out and you don't see what it says in context with the other sections. So I think, and that's something that, you know, Mike can get his arms around, Mike Bissonette can get his arms around real well, and then come back with some feedback. So that's just for your consideration, Mike, if you would, and then maybe you could give us some feedback on those thoughts. Not now, because it's, you know, I'm not going to catch you off guard. It's ridiculous, but when you have a chance to reflect on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGivern and then Attorney Bissonette.
Thank you, Councillor LISI. And gentlemen, I appreciate and obviously understand the rationale behind the request here. Your reasoning is sound when it comes to public safety. You know, welcome Attorney Bissonette to our City Solicitor Department. It's a pleasure to see you. But I want to just be a devil's advocate for a minute here and ask a couple questions. How many dogs are licensed in the city of Holyoke?
I couldn't say.
Does anybody know?
Currently?
Currently.
Currently, there's close to 4,000.
4,000 dogs. How many of these incidents are reported each year that worry us?
Dog bites in general? Close to, I do about, personally, I'm not talking about the ones that go to TJO, but I do about maybe 30 to 40 a month.
30 to 40 out of
a month.
A month.
And especially in the warmer months, it picks up. Like today alone, I did 3.
And these are unrestrained, loose dogs
They
that
could
are licensed?
they could maybe unrestrained, or they could just be incidences that happen in the homes.
In the homes where they don't have to be restrained.
Sure.
Okay. We create laws for safety, and I understand that. But laws that we create often punish people who are doing the right thing with their pets. We do this with speed limits. You know, we create speed limits and expect people to drive 10 miles an hour above the speed limit. You know, how many people are we not harming, but how many people are we sending the wrong message to when we create a law to protect the 30 or 40, you know, dogs that are not restrained in a given month? That's the question I have. And I think it goes with Councilor Bartley's question is, you know, when is it a reverse liability as to what we're doing? No one can answer my question. I'm just throwing this out for discussion. I remember when Councilor Jourdain created this language, he made a good argument about this. And we created this language specifically to have flexibility so that people that were dog owners that were doing the right thing, you know, weren't going to get hit with a $100 fine for having fun with their pet. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Bissonette.
I think it's important to know what the civil liability side would be for the pet owner as you consider this, and this would take it under advisement as we review the best way to put these thoughts together. But in civil practice, it's strict liability. So, for example, my dog Coco, who's also known as Houdini, has over her 11 years made several escapes, and some with leash and license, some without, and has sometimes been known to have a kennel dog for teaching dog. So I'm fully aware of pet ownership issues on both sides of it. But it is strict liability on the pet owner should the pet get out no matter what happens. jump over a fence, dug under a fence, broke a leash. That pet gets away, it causes harm, attacks a child, attacks another dog, and the owner's liable. What part the city plays in that would be very, very hard to do in a civil suit like this. You know, it's like similar to a drunk driver running a stop sign and killing people. And because there's a law against drunk drivers, is it the city of Holyoke's fault because that drunk driver happened to be in Holyoke when he caused the fatality? Absolutely not. So there's a lot of issues here at play in terms of the civil liability. In terms of the ordinance, you can both carve out whatever exemptions you want from the leash law and also set parameters of the fine, leaving some discretion to your hearing officer as to whether or not the fine can be waived or abated if some type of language was put in talking about the efforts of the homeowner or pet owner. So those are just my initial thoughts, and we'll certainly take everything that's been said tonight on this issue under advisement.
Thank you. It seems that we have a number of amendments to at least consider, and so I think at this point we might ask for a legal form to capture the discussion, and then we could review the legal form with the amendments that came up this evening. How does that sound to you as the maker, Councilor Anderson-Burgos? So what I have here is that we'd like to add electric fence to the definitions for fence earlier in chapter 14. That we'd like to have some language in B that talks about, you know, the dogs can be off leash in a secured fenced-in area, a pen, or a public area specifically dedicated for use by dogs. And then I think that we'd like to have some more clarification about what the different legal liabilities would be with different versions. Is there anything else?
I mean, I think if we do that, we get it back, we have a chance to review it and go over it one more time just to make sure. I mean, I'm all for the safety aspects of this. I just want to make sure, because again, as I was thinking about it, so if, you know, in your own yard without a fence, but you're with your dog and you're just playing with your dog, and somebody happens to come on your property, you know, your intent was just to be with your dog in your backyard or whatever, but it's not fenced in. Are you in violation if your dog defends you from another dog or another person, as the case might be? I mean, those are. I have a little concern with that. I just don't want us to go too far, but I appreciate it, and I certainly think if your dog goes off property, that's a whole. There's no question in my mind. You got to have a responsibility for that somehow. But I mean, I think what we're trying to do is get legal opinion, get some more research on legal, kind of get a refined ordinance, so we got a chance to read that, and we may tweak that one more time. But so I would just suggest that we do that, make that motion to send it to legal, to be put in legal form, and ask some liability issues, get some of that reported back to us, and then after that we table it.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to table and refer to legal for a draft to review. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Thank you, Sean and Mr. Velez, for coming in this evening. I think that's the only one that you guys were here for, right? Okay. We don't have anyone from VCare.
Yes, I believe we do. I believe Olga is on the call, but I guess she was hearing the conversation. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. We can definitely hear you.
Okay, so wait, let's
I'm sorry.
let's do this in order. So we'll need to motion to suspend the necessary rules and entertain a motion to suspend the necessary rules and proceed out of order to item number 8, filed by Councilor
make that
LeBron
motion.
Martinez. The motion has been made. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. So item number 8, Councilor LeBron Martinez says that the City Council, through the appropriate committee, consider a drop-off and pickup for 2 parking spots for the van that will pick and drop off participants that attend the V-Care adult care at the address of 200 to 210 High Street. This program serves a population of 60 and older and is necessary to assure their safety. We do have an accompanied letter. It says urgent request. This is from Elena Eaton from V-Care Medical. And she writes, to whom it may concern, V-Care Medical is located at 200-210 High Street in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and it occupies 10,000 square feet on the first floor of the building. The premises is leased for 10 years. V-Care Medical is offering the list of medical services concentrating on elderly and disabled populations. The main entrance is located on the corner of Maple and High Street. Patients are getting transported in and out of the facility on a daily basis by V-Care Medical Transportation. It's critical for a safety reason for V-Care Medical to pick up and drop off patients directly from the front entrance. We will appreciate your assistance for letting V-Care Medical use 2 metered parking spots for pickup and drop-off area in the front of the main entrance. We will appreciate your attention to this matter as soon as possible. Thank you in advance. Again, Elena Eaton, Program Director. Under discussion, Councilor LeBron Martinez, as the maker, do you want to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. I missed the last meeting, and I know it was tabled for tonight to have it received and viewed again, and thank you all for allowing this to happen. And I think that the public also, I will do this publicly more in our city council meeting. I'm dealing with a personal matter at home. Many of you know my situation, and it's really kept me from attending the various meetings. But I'm here tonight to kind of advocate for this reason, for the request that was made. And, you know, it was explained that this is going to go through a committee. And unfortunately, because like I said, I couldn't make it to this last meeting, it was tabled for tonight for more clarification. I believe someone from V-Care is here, Olga, Olga Lezan, who may, you know, if with the permission of the committee and the chair, she can answer questions you may have.
Yes, good evening. Hi.
We need to make a motion to suspend the rules and allow you to speak.
I'll make the motion.
Oh.
Motion has been made and seconded to allow the public to speak.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Your name and address for the record.
Mine?
Yes.
My name is Olga, last name is Roth, and I'm an owner of V-Care Adult Day Health Center and other services that we provide to patients in Holyoke. The address, do you need my personal address or you need a business address?
It's your home address as a public speaker.
Okay, sure. It's 16 King Street, King, Wayland, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
01778.
Sure. So feel free to, say a few words and explain the situation there and why you think the need for pickup drop-off is necessary.
So we open Monday through Friday, and the main entrance is on 210 High Street, which is intersection between High Street and Maple Street. And patients, when they coming in, so there's better and literally better handicap access to them to come in. We have patients, some of them on a wheelchair. We have others with walkers, and it's not as problematic for them to walk through the main entrance versus if they're gonna go through the back. And it makes it so much more efficient and easier for the staff to help them out of the vents and get them inside of the building. So, especially, we opened in the winter, so it was very difficult for us to help them from the cars. And since we tried a couple of times at that entrance, it's definitely much easier for them and for the staff. We want to prevent the fall. We want to prevent any injuries when they at the daycare and in general. So that can definitely benefit if we can have that 2 spots there available. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any from the committee?
Thank you.
Councilor Murphy and then Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Ms. Ryder. So first of all, how many, I'm assuming I'm going to call them clients, or they could be patients, but I'm going to call them clients for now.
Okay.
Approximately how many per day?
So our capacity is 72 patients, clients. Right now we have up to 42 patients daily there. So we open Monday through Friday. So we open from 8 till 4, patients arriving by 9 o'clock, and after 2:30 they're leaving. So after 3 o'clock we have no clients in the building.
And are they all coming by van, and is it a special van?
Yeah, we have 2 special vans for them, handicapped, so they are coming, our drivers picking them up at their houses. We have a few only who's driving, but sometimes they don't. It's not permanent. They just, whenever they can, but mostly we're picking them up. Yep.
Okay, and without getting into confidentiality, are some of these clients in wheelchairs or no?
Yeah, we have an elderly population. So our average age between 60 and 75. So we have some patients who are younger, but only a few of them. So yes, and then as we have about 10 patients pending an admission. So they also in that range. And yes, some can be, and also another very important thing is it's not just for the drop-off, it's in case if we need an ambulance. Ambulance, really, if I believe since January we called once, we needed ambulance. So we need to have a really good access for ambulance to come and be able to help. If it's a back door, it's not really reliable. Plus we have other cars parking there from Social Security office. So practically it's their parking. So we can park our cars there as well, but it's really complicated for patients to get inside and for ambulance as well. So I forgot about the ambulance.
Okay, and one last question. I mean, there is I believe there's a parking lot on the north side of the building. Would they, I'm assuming you're renting from the people that own that, so would they not allow 2 parking spots there?
So they allowed us to park, but not, we tried that already. So not like for, there's not enough space for 2 vans to be there and to drop off and pick up patients. So it takes way more time. There is only like one door. Here we have 2, they're not revolving, but they're pretty large 2 doors that we can use. And there's also a little hill that was kind of complicated during the winter time, and not for every patient it's easy to get in. Plus, there's too many cars there. There's a really, really small, like between the cars, there's not enough space for us to have 2 cars and to drop and pick up. So, and then at the same time, we may have other cars leaving, or the Social Security staff going to lunch or need to leave the office. So that makes it complicated, really.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McGivern. Councilor Bartley next.
Thank you, Councilor LISI. Olga, welcome. And I no doubt the service you provide is needed. I no doubt you do it very well, and I understand your request for the drop-off. The big picture makes us have to ask a lot of questions and make a difficult decision. Your 2-block area after Dwight Street, there is a number of businesses, restaurants, people who depend upon on-street parking. Parking in the neighborhood has changed dramatically. We built a parking deck many years ago, and we fought to keep that parking deck so that people who own businesses, people who work downtown, have a place to park in the parking deck. Okay? This building has a parking lot that you just described could be redesigned for these vans if the owner of the building did the right thing. And it's been happening not just with 200 High Street, but we saw the PVTA took over a lot of good parking from these restaurants on the other side of the opposite side of the street from where you are. There's a city parking lot, you know, down the street, which I'm understanding now is being leased out to a business. Not sure if the entire parking lot is leased out, but we many years ago at the Chamber of Commerce worked to have a complete plan for downtown parking. And we designed on each block a drop-off area. Now, there is a drop-off area in this particular block that we could move and recreate, you know, to be allowed for vans, your vans, to come and go. To lose 2 parking places for, you know, 2 vans that are not there all day is something we cannot do, because you cannot create by state law something where a van can stay stationary in a parking lot and have its own parking place on a public road. So what I'm asking is that you understand there's a bigger picture here and work with the city on how to do this. And how often are the vans coming and going?
So they coming in the morning between 8:30 and 9:30. So they dropping patients off, and then they picking them up around 2 o'clock. So by 3, everybody's gone. I understand the big picture. I absolutely understand, and I respect that. We sort of far from the restaurants, and I do understand the parking is needed. The patients who we serve, they're Holyoke, they from all from Holyoke, and they also patients of Holyoke Health Center, who we have a really good relationship with. So it's, in some case, we are serving Holyoke by servicing the patients, and if let's say if they driving, if they can drive, they would take that parking slots anyway. So, and again, we Monday through Friday right now, and we're not gonna stay there. We really, I understand that we can probably find a place farther. For vans, it's not a problem, but for the patients, it's a problem. They can't walk that far, and it's not safe. So we're looking at the safety, we're looking at the patient's convenience for sure, because it should be easier, and it doesn't, if it's that convenient, it doesn't take a long time for them to get from the van and go to the center. So that's just, again, I totally understand, but I'm still asking to kind of look at the perspective of from their perspective, when they don't have any other options right now. Why? And in terms of owners of the building who we're renting from, we spoke with them, but they also have to think about other tenants and its social security office as well. We've been really patient with, while during the COVID, all of their visitors came to us asking where the social security, why the door is locked, and we asked them to help us out as well, but they also have obligations. So we don't want to jeopardize our relationship with them or with the social security services, because we have to collaborate and work together. We in the same building, but at the same time, if there is a slightest opportunity for us to use for a couple of hours per day, the slots that they're there, it'll be great for our patients who are also from Holyoke.
The parking meters are a maximum of 2 hours, and then the car has to leave. It's called transitional parking so that we keep a turnover of people coming downtown, hopefully to be customers at a retail store, customers at a restaurant. So losing two parking meters of that nature is kind of big. And I'm trying to figure out how we can do it to accommodate your clients deserve, you know, a safe access to the program. But we can't designate drop-offs for every business within the city of Holyoke, or we'd have nothing but drop-offs. So the vans come in the morning and then leave and then come back in the afternoon. So there's going to be no one there between 9:30 and...
We will not, we will not use it unless it's a drop-off. And I mean, we would like to, but I understand that we have to compromise. So we will use it for drop-off and for pickup only.
But you can't. Drop-off is, it can only stay in the drop-off zone until they drop off, then they have to move. And that's true for the entire state, you know, and that's true for, you know, for the entire downtown. So it's going to be 2 vacant spots for the bulk of the business day. Vacant being nothing, it's not going to be used.
So, so you need to be recognized by the chair. We don't have dialogue back and forth. So I'm going to ask both Councilor McGivern and our guest, Ms. Rod, to refrain from the back and forth. But
I thought we were asking questions.
Yeah, I thought I'm answering, but it's okay. Sure, I will.
Questions, but we're not going to get answers right away. I mean, that's not.
I don't understand how else to get answers if you don't ask a question, but.
In the same way that, you know, we asked a number of questions, and when we had Attorney Bissonette, for example, he responded to the full array of questions that were asked. So, I mean, I'm going to interject here and just say we do have a number of spots in the city that we've developed over the past 5 years or so for drop-off, and saying no parking here during these hours because it's a drop-off pickup spot. So we have that over by Square One. We have it over on Suffolk Street. So I think it's totally reasonable to be able to put up some signage that says no parking during this 1 hour slot in the morning and this 1 hour slot in the afternoon. And that seems to achieve what the business needs. It allows the city to retain the parking and the metered parking, so that there's no, you know, revenue loss, and then the businesses that need the parking for the duration of the day are only inconvenienced slightly for roughly an hour period of time in the morning and the afternoon. I'll turn it back over to Councilor McGivern because he was in the middle of questioning. And all I want to make sure that we're doing is not having a back and forth, because we just don't conduct the meetings like that typically. We ask the questions and then we allow time for somebody to respond. Councilor McGivern.
Olga, thank you for answering my questions. I understand, and I'm just looking for a compromise, but the big picture is important, and that's all I wanted to do was see if we could come to a compromise to help you out, but also to help out all the owners, property owners downtown.
Thank you. Councilor Bartley.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Olga, where are you? Where'd she go?
Yes, I'm here.
She's still there.
Oh, hi, Olga.
I'm still there. Yeah, hello.
Yes, okay. So, Olga, well, first of all, welcome to Holyoke, and thank you to your business for investing. One thing I didn't hear, when did you start your lease? When did your lease commence?
Let me think. So the first, we've been, boy, don't remember.
Doesn't have to be exact, just ballpark it.
Last year. So
okay.
we started with one part of it only, and then we rented the rest during COVID.
Okay, so you're leasing 10,000 square feet. I assume you reviewed the building and you looked there before you. That's a pretty sizable. For Holyoke, that's a pretty sizable business space, and I presume you looked at it and at probably the time. And just your agency, what is your how many, what's your ballpark, what's your agency's budget, how many locations and how many employees?
So we only have one location. In the building, we have, with the drivers, we have about 8 people every day in a building, excluding patients, employees. They all park in a garage, none of them parking near.
Right, and they park in the garage. Wow. Okay, that's great. And then what do your agency's budget? What's the, I assume is government. You know, you get government reimbursements probably as opposed to private pay. So about what is your government budget?
So majority of our patients are Mass Health patients, and Mass Health reimburses us for the clinical services and for transportation as well.
Okay, all right, well, that's close enough. All right, so I'm going to, first of all, you're serving an important population, and a population that deserves whatever we can do to help them. But what you're asking is to, and I was wondering if the tables were turned, and how would you feel, regardless of the importance of this population, Olga? I mean, we know it's a vulnerable population. We know that. But what you're asking is to say that whoever's in the buildings down that end of High Street, and whatever businesses are there, and I worked there at 195 High Street for almost 9 years. My office was on the first floor of 195 for almost 9 years. I relocated in 2018, but so I saw firsthand for 9 years, including Saturdays, just how important it is to have public parking, because my clients and the clients of the person from whom I was renting is not a young population, and they want to have ease of access, and they don't want to have to park. They didn't want to even park in the parking garage. Now that you know where that is, you know, halfway down Dwight Street, they didn't want to walk up the hill and take a right onto High and cross it. They wanted to park as close to 195 as they could, and that required parking meters. What you're saying, and what is being suggested by the sponsoring counselor, and we've had this situation before, is to remove private parking and public parking for a private purpose. What I heard the prior speaker saying, and I have to say, you know, to me, the prior speaker was doing a great job trying to figure out, you know, dialogue, compromise. I don't have a compromise right now, but to give away 2 or 3 public parking spaces when the demand is there, the demand for the park, so I just think it's an unreasonable, and to say, even though it's a vulnerable population, I think, you know, that's not a red herring, but yet it's playing the sympathy card, and I get it, but you've got to look at I'm just one vote, I have to look at the larger picture of other businesses that are there, whether they're restaurants or accountants or lawyers, because there's plenty of them who have clients that don't want to walk from the parking deck or wherever else. They don't want to walk from over at Veterans Park. They don't want to do that, and there's a safety concern as well. So, you know, and we're not ignorant to the safety concern and speeders and all the rest of that on High Street. We're not ignorant to that. So, my only thought as a potential compromise, and this would not be a freebie, because I would not want to see your agency get free parking at 2 meters, whether it's half a day or all day. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair for anybody. But if you want to consider having you pay for it, your agency can pay for it, or your clients can pay for it, because gosh, no, ambulance companies, they don't charge a small amount. If there's a compromise, and this is going to have to go through legal and to see if we can even do this, which that's a stretcher case, but if we can have your agency pay for 2 public parking spaces for a period of time, during the business hours of X to Y, and I don't even know if any counselors want to go for that. I'm spitballing right now. But perhaps that could be a winner. I'll just finish on this note. And I'll just go through to the chair to acting Mayor Murphy. Well, no, I'm not even gonna do that. We already gave away under a prior regime public parking spaces for a private entity, which was contrary to city ordinances. But half of this room didn't turn a blind eye, but the other half did, and the former executive certainly did. And we allowed a private company to not pay the city a penny to take 2 public parking spaces for a period of about 9 years. And we just did it. Now, I think the acting mayor, I'm not going to put on the spot, but he filed the order to dissolve that. I'm pretty sure he's working on, okay, that's gone now. So that's the temperature at this point, Olga. So it's not to say we don't appreciate you, because obviously we do. You're bringing employees. On top of that, your employees are paying in the garage, as you just readily said. So you're pitching in. I want to help support you, but not at carte blanche parking, taking the spots away all day long when you know darn well there's all sorts of businesses around there. So A, you got that possibility, we can talk about it. B, you can talk to your landlord for whom you're paying, I'm sure, a healthy rent. I'm sure you are. I didn't even ask what the rent was, because that's a private matter, and I wouldn't dare be so presumptuous, but you're paying a healthy rent. And C, maybe you can talk to your butter, Social Security. Good luck with that. But I don't think I have a D, Joe. So that's really where I am. At this point, I am by no means ever going to support pulling 2 public parking spaces away from the public for any long period of time again. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
So,
can I just say a little thing? I know I'm probably not supposed to, but this is my first time doing it. I have never done it. I didn't even think it's going to be free parking. So I just need to know what our options. Like, if we can, we'll respect it. There's no problem. If there is a possibility and we need to pay, we'll review it as well. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know what the rules are. Again, I have never done it. And this is kind of like my first time. So I'm trying to, see what the options are, simply. So, and I totally understand the big picture. And I understand that it's not right to give a public, to a private businesses. Totally in agreement. I wouldn't even ask. I just didn't know what the options are.
Thank you. Councilor LeBron Martinez, I see your hand is up. I just want to make a couple of points here. I want to reiterate the point that I made earlier, that we have a precedent in the city for creating exceptions for pickup and drop-off parking. We have it right across the street for Square One, and again down on Suffolk Street, that I could just bring to mind immediately. So what I would like to propose is that we create a no parking between 8:30 and 9:30 and 2:30 and 3:30 weekdays for 1 parking space. You have 2 vans, and it seems that you would be able to sequentially bring 1 van in at a time to that space within an hour period of time to do the drop-off and pick up. Does that sound like something that could work for you?
Yeah.
Great. So I'll recognize Councilor LeBron Martinez, and then anyone else who wants to weigh in on that proposal.
Through the chair, if I may. I just want Olga to understand that she did the right thing. You did the right process for the protocol, calling me, asking me to request this order, which I did, and this is how it came out, And again, we have made exceptions, and there was said it's not only the places that our chair just listed, but we just, I believe about 2 years ago, I had a request for a school locally here, Lawrence School. Parents asked me for a drop-off moment for them to drop off children in front of Lawrence, because it's a busy street, and safety was an issue when they were dropping off kids in the middle. They had to double park and cross the kid across and whatever, and that was accommodated. So you're not the only one, so I don't want you to feel like, you know, these kind of answers are coming at you. You did the right thing, and I did the right thing of requesting the order. So just bear that in mind. Thank you also for understanding that if you had to be paid, you know, if you was to be charged by the city for these parkings, which I would like to know if many of the others that we made exceptions for are paying for it as well. I would like to make an order that these are also revisit and make sure that everybody else is paying as well. Because I'm gonna choose certain people and others or other businesses, I think we should do them for all. But again, Olga, I just want to remind you that you did the right thing, and we're just get the answer through this committee, and this is how it works. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers want to be recognized? Do you want a motion to adopt the language that I suggested?
Oh, yes, sir. I'd motion to adopt the language that Chair LISI made.
So, Councilor Murphy, since you're just rejoining us, what I had suggested was creating no parking for 1 hour, 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning, and 1 hour, 2:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon for one spot. We'll have to get the exact location from the engineer. Again, we have the precedent in the city for allowing pickup and drop off. We haven't charged those other entities, and with one parking space and a full hour for pickup and drop off, it seems that they should be able to get their 2 vans sequentially into that space for drop off and pickup. So Councilor Anderson-Burgos has made the motion, and I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
So it's a 2-to-1 vote, and it fails.
I would make a motion to table it, though, and, I mean, we're not gonna pass an ordinance at least until August 3rd anyway, so, I'd like to take a look, and you mentioned a few places, I wanna see where they are, I wanna go through that and just, cross-reference. I also would like to take a few walks in the morning and a few walks in the afternoon.
Just a point of
So
order.
I can kind of see what's going on.
A point of order.
Councilor Bartley?
You got to recognize it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, point of order. So what you're doing is you don't have measurements. B, you don't have legal language in front of you. C, you're just doing something without any kind of analysis. So I don't think what you passed can even stand up, and I'm going to make a prediction it's not going to stand up in City Council. Thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear, the motion failed, and it was just to create the legal language, just like we did previously.
I didn't hear the motion failing. It was 2-to-1.
I'm sorry, because it's a 3-person committee, so I was imagining that we needed 3.
You don't have to imagine that. You have 3 here now, so it's majority. I know, so majority of those it's those present in committees. That's what our rules say. Our rules say the majority in those present in the committee.
You're right. You're right. So I motioned and ruled that it failed because, again, I was under the impression that I needed 3. So the motion carries, and I would say, given that we're not going to pass it in a month anyhow, in terms of a formal vote, we need to get a draft of the legal language. We need to have the engineer give us a location, which I stated when I made the original motion. Acting Mayor Murphy has time within the next month or so to do the walks that he wants to and to take a good look at things, and we'll be able to review a draft of the legal language it will be...
July 23rd?
No, it'll be likely August 10th, most likely.
We always table it. Why do you pass a motion? You've already passed it. You just ought to reconsider it. You ought to just reconsider your action. You ought to table it till you get legal language and till you talk to the city engineer. And furthermore, you should see if this is even legal to pull out meters. You need a legal opinion.
We're not looking to pull out meters. Calm down, Councilor Bartley. First of all, calm down. Second of all, you're not being recognized.
Don't characterize how
You
I'm
don't
speaking. You
need
have no
to.
right to do that.
You don't need to shout across the room.
You
I understand.
You don't have to make this personal.
You are making some valid points. Please just slow down and relax.
Don't characterize how don't characterize how I am. Don't make it personal either. I mean, just you want to raise the temperature, fine. Save that for the campaign. I'm not here for that.
Oh, please.
So, here's the motion.
This is so embarrassing. This is freaking embarrassing. That we're in front of a business and acting like this, and yet we call ourselves friendly businesses. We could be losing these kind of businesses to another community. Let's face this. This is not a big deal, just making a decision on a 2 parking space. When we have the parking, the reasons we're talking here about the parking across from Fernandez, for example, that is a parking space available for any of the businesses that want to park. We have our public parking that we didn't even have people parking there because of our free parking in our community, which I understand we need it for those who cannot make it to the parking lot. Well, those parking lots were not even being used. Right now, we had to lease it to somebody else to run it to do some revenue. So let's.
And Councilor LeBron Martinez, I want to just call order again and say, from the beginning,
I'm sorry for the.
We should reconsider the actions because Councilor Bartley made a correct point that we did motion to adopt as opposed to draft into legal form, which I believe was the intention, because we did talk about all the pieces that need to be in place. So, motion to reconsider our actions.
Second.
I'll
make that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor to reconsider our actions?
Aye.
Aye. So, any opposed? So moved. So that's a 3-0 vote to reconsider. Now, is there a renewed motion? That we draft into legal form.
Oh, that we draft into legal form. And
so I'd like to entertain a motion that we draft into legal form, no parking space for pickup and drop-off purposes, similar to what we've created in the past, for the hours of 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning, 2:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon, for 1 parking space, and that we allow the engineer and the legal department to present us with a draft at our next meeting.
I'll entertain that motion.
A question for the engineer.
The engineer is not here.
Well, I just like to have a question while he drafts it.
That's fine.
Okay.
It's not clear.
I understand he's not here. Just because it's a drop-off zone and the type of clientele that VCare takes care of, is it going to have to be a larger space for drop-off of handicapped people? Just a question there.
We will forward that question along with the request for the designated area over to the engineer. Any other discussion on the motion? Councilor Bartley.
First of all, I apologize for raising my voice. Okay, so I do apologize. I don't want to get anybody upset, and whether it's embarrassing or not, you've been in the room with me for 10 years, Gladys. I mean, this is not the first time, and I do apologize, and I try to be a gentleman most of the times. All right, but just through the chair to Gladys, I do apologize if I offended you or anybody else. But listen, I'm just trying to do my best here with what I can. One other small thing, I would humbly suggest that you get an opinion from the law department as to whether the meters, if we're gonna have just do this with a meter there, if you can have a meter and yet have no parking at a meter between certain hours. I would also suggest, and I heard what the Ward 1 councilor said, and I heard what the at-large councilor said about we do this for other places. I don't have that readily available at my fingertips. If we do that, if we do, we can compare what's happening here to what they are, and maybe it's apples to apples, or maybe it's not. I mean, you can't just say because we do one way that we set the precedent. You can't say that to be true, Gladys, and neither can anybody else. So I would want to know what the comparison is for what we're doing and how we're doing it. And the last thing is, listen, I was complimentary to the person, to the applicant here. I didn't hear any other counselor complimenting the person for renting space. So I would actually consider that once in a while before you jump to conclusions. You know, this is not my first time in a meeting here. I try to be prepared. I try to do my best, but, you know, sometimes it gets the best of me. But I did apologize. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any other discussion on the order, or the motion, rather? Seeing none, I'll motion to,
The motion was already made.
yes, I know, but we haven't voted on it.
Oh, we
So-
should send a copy to legal. You should consider that.
Motion to have legal draft us a form with the no parking exceptions for pickup and drop off as were stated. Also, send a question to the engineer regarding the size of the parking space for the handicap transportation to do pickup drop off, as well as a question to legal regarding no parking exceptions with a meter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 2-1. So this will have before us again, most likely at our August 10th meeting, but we'll confirm that as we get closer. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you,
Thank
Olga.
you.
All right, we're back in regular order, and
I'd like to make a motion to take up item number 1 off the table.
Second.
1, 2, and 3 are all
as a package?
related, if we would like to take them up for discussion.
So I'll make the motion to take up item 1, 2, 3 as a package.
And 4, too.
And 4.
And
Yes.
4.
Oh, I say it now. I lost it in my notes. 1 through 4 is a package. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Under discussion, I will turn it over to Councilor McGivern as the maker of the first order on the agenda, and then Councilor Murphy, if you want to add anything to that.
Thank you, Councilor Lisi. Real quick, nothing new to add since I addressed the committee, and obvious with the, I don't have the number of the agenda, but with the item before your committee tonight on the returning of the sewer rate fixing to the, thanks, to the DPW Commission, my item would be a moot point, being that the enterprise funding that I'm interested in would be because we don't have line item control over the budget, but we do have the control over the setting of the rate, and I think that it should go hand in hand. So at the moment, I would just stick with my argument, but if we are going to return the sewer rate fixing to the DPW Commission, my request becomes moot.
Thank you. And Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, obviously, I put a proposal, and I worked with Mr. McManus in terms of, and our city auditor in terms of trying to come up with a rate that would get us where we are eliminating the deficit in the sewer fund and be somewhat planning for the additional capital improvements that we need to make over the next few years so that we're not having to address it consistently. But I will say, first of all, thank you to the superintendent for giving me a good calculation in terms of what it would take. I would like to, if I can, I really want to encourage that we move on. In my two speculations, if we were to do item 2 and transfer it to the DPW Commission, my gut is that they would probably be adopting number 3. But if I can ask the superintendent, every month that we delay, the increase, if we went to 805, was about 1.4 or 1.5 million. So am I correct that about every month we delay, if we don't raise that rate, we're losing about 125,000 to the superintendent?
Yeah, I would say approximately that, yes.
Yeah. So I think it's imperative that we act. I'm hoping that one way or the other we can act on this at August 3rd so that we're, if that were passed at that time, we would at least be about 1.35, 1.375 additional to offset the deficit, including the 1.7 million from the ARPA money that would put the city in balance with a little bit of a surplus, but certainly would take care of whoever is going to be the new mayor, take care of the deficit as a major part of their budget calculations for fiscal 23. And I do think it's a reasonable rate. I think, you know, he offered all of the various calculations in terms of, I think the average is about 93% collection on time. So all of those factors were put in there, and that's kind of how we came out to the 805 rate. And I looked at cutting a little bit, but I thought after long term and looking at what our future sewer capital expenses are, it made sense to stay at that rate. So thank you, Superintendent McManus. I appreciate your work on that.
Thank you so much. I'm fully in support of returning the setting of the sewer rate to the DPW Commission. I think that it's just a more effective and focused board that can keep up to date with the needs of the enterprise fund and the needs of the department related to wastewater management. Two things, I think, Mr. McManus, I'd like for you to say a few words about where we're at and where the rate brings us. It seems like you had a letter, but I don't have it on the table with us, or is it in the folder? Yeah, okay, so I'll circulate that. The other thing is, can we also just review the process? Because I'm under the impression that we have to have a series of public hearings before we could set the rate. And I'm just not sure if we have the most up-to-date information about where exactly, what the process looks like today and where exactly we are in the process. So those are the two things I'd like for you to address if you can. Can we get copies of this?
So the rate of $8.05 per 1,000 gallons, that came out of us looking at what our expenses would be for next fiscal year. We have personal services, the service contract, some other miscellaneous expenses, and then debt service. The total expenses are about $9,050,000 for fiscal year 22. We have our revenue consists of money that comes in from the sewer rate, industrial billing, and then some nominal permit fees that really don't play a part in revenues just because of how small they are at the end of the year. So if we looked at industrial billing, estimated about $1.1 million in industrial billing, and the rest of our expenses would need to be made up from the sewer rates, and that's just under $8 million. We looked at historical sewer usage, and the sewer usage ranges between 1.16 billion gallons per year and 1.11 billion gallons per year. It's a lot of water, but last year we were at 1.13 billion gallons a year. So if we take a conservative estimate of 1.1 billion gallons, and then do the math for the $8 million that we need, the 1.1 billion gallons of usage, and then factor in a 93% collection rate, we would get to exactly $7.77 per 1,000 gallons, and that would be a break-even number, a break-even rate. If we budgeted a little bit higher on the sewer rates, that would allow us to have some reserves. That would allow us to operate in times where our collections are lower than normal. And with an enterprise fund, you can actually bank reserves to pay for capital projects so that you don't have to go into debt service. You can't necessarily do that for something on the size of the Jackson Street Sewer Separation Project, but certainly some larger repairs at the treatment plant or in the collection system could be done with accrued reserves. So all of that math was provided in the letter that was sent back on June 11th to the council.
And it was circulated, our administrative assistant made photocopies for everyone in the room, and you noted the date, so we could also circulate electronic copies to anybody who is looking for it.
And then for your second question as to how the sewer rate is set, right now it's set by the council, and any change needs to come after a public hearing held by the city council, and it's in the ordinances, section 90-90 for the sewer use charge.
Right, thank you. And then I have one more question for you. Just because I remember going through this just a few years ago, I believe it was in 17 that we passed the last rate. Is that correct?
2018.
2018. So I remember you had a similar set of projections based on various rates, and just wondering if by any chance you kept notes and know how accurate your projections were back then for when we would fall off of a rate at which we were covering the costs to manage and run our
so back then I had estimated a rate of $7.25 for fiscal year 22 would be our break-even rate.
And where are we at presently?
Well, we're recommending $8.05 in order to build a contingency. I think back then I believe I had neglected to put in the 93% collection rate. So if we were to have 100% collection and not have any reserves, an estimated rate would be $7.23 for fiscal year 22. But we know we only get 93% collection. So that puts us into a deficit, and still that would be a break even where we wouldn't be building any reserves.
Okay, thank you so much. Questions from committee members, councilors? Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, if I can, just so if you look at the 5-year projection in terms of the expenses, just look at fiscal 23, we're going to have a long-term debt payment, which is going up approximately $400,000. If you look at the wastewater treatment cost, that's going up about $130,000 or $140,000 next year. But if you go back for the next 5 years, you're talking another $550,000. So I think creating a little bit of reserve makes sense, and also puts us in a position that, we're not going to constantly have to alter the rate. We got a rate that makes sense from a perspective of our projected increases over the next 5 years. Gives us a little bit of a cushion in this year. Eliminates the deficit in terms of the budget discussion for next year, and hopefully puts us in a position where we don't have to deal with deficits anymore. I would just make one point, if I can. Is it just one public hearing that the council has to have in order, and can it just be in the Ordinance Committee? Can we call a public? We could call a public hearing to do that, right?
That's what it looks like in Muni Code.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. And I would just make one last point, which I've tried to make in my letter to the council, knowing that would be now would approximately be a 1.35 or $1.4 million increase, and the taxes are going to probably be a $1.6 or $1.7 million increase. And rather than have $3 million come on at the same time, I have spoken with bond counsel, and the idea of trying to give a tax break to offset some of the additional costs, so that the ratepayer and the taxpayer wouldn't have to take this $3 million burden in 1 year, is on the table if we could do that, and bond counsel has indicated that would actually improve our bond rating because in planning every budget, the deficit would be eliminated.
Great. That sounds great. Councilor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just going to raise a couple of points for anybody who cares. I'm just going to start with the last point that Councilor Murphy made. To go from 665, which is, I think that's the number you were looking for, Madam Chair, that's where we currently are, to 805 is a 20% leap in 1 year. I just think that's unreasonable coming out of a worldwide pandemic with people's budgets still hurting. I don't think that's even fair. I don't even think it should be considered. I know people are going to vote for it, but not everybody's making $95,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 a year. Not everybody's making that kind of money. So that's one. If we're going to do it, it ought to be staggered at best. And how to stagger it, we can talk about that. But the hope is that we can maybe in the first year come to at least the break-even point. So I just want to throw that on the table. Second of all, I want to throw on the table, we are seeing more development in the IG zone based upon decisions that we made and votes we've taken. And it's my hope that some of this will actually turn into new growth. And if there's going to be new growth, then I'm hopeful that there'll be more ratepayers that are chipping in. Third, I would like to see a little more detail than just a 93%. Specifically, who are the 7%, Mike? Specifically, I'm not saying that now, Mike, it's a rhetorical question, but specifically, communication should be sent to a minimum to the council, and then it should be considered to be made public, just like the scofflaws that don't pay the property taxes. We had one city councilor 9 years ago, I felt terrible for the councilor who didn't pay taxes. It was simply a mistake. But let me tell you, the taxes got paid right away. So that ought to be considered. If we're going to do this, we should fight as hard as we can to get as close as we can to 100%. The last point, again, this is through the chair to Mike or to anybody. We know that we've got we've heard this multiple times in my 9.5 years here. We have group homes, we have nonprofits, we have a union that went up next to the former Sears, took over the whole building, put in over $1 million, and now they don't pay a nickel in property tax. Well, good for you. Good for you, because we don't have a pilot. And that's something maybe we could consider in Boston, have a pilot. But my question, Mike, whether you can answer it now, is are they exempt, even though they're exempt from, I don't think they're not exempt from electric. I know they're not exempt from that. But are they exempt from water and sewer? I don't think that they are, but I would want to have that confirmed. And same way with group homes, because, as Joe and others, we've said it a million times. This is a welcoming community. It has always been a welcoming community. We know that. But let's be real. I mean, if group homes are going to pay zero taxes and take over neighborhoods, at least we can soften that argument by saying, hey, we're paying a pilot, or we're paying the G&E, we're supporting our water and sewer. We're paying our bills. Yes, we have an exemption for property tax, but at least we've occupied a space, a building in the city, and we're good stewards as far as the other stuff goes. And I think that would be a helpful argument, at least for me, if I'm going to take any kind of a vote. And the last thing I'm going to say is I hope, if we're going to have a public hearing, that I hope is not in a subcommittee. I hope we can have a public hearing at a full council meeting, because I think that's the best. If you actually want to hear from the public, in this case, we could maybe suspend our rules and not have the public speak out, and we could actually have the public hearing, but it should be in a full city council. It should not be on an off night and an ordinance committee. I would ask you to not consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as I understand, when we post the public hearing, we have to post the exact rate that's under consideration. Do you recall that being the case, Mike?
I believe
What was
Two
that?
mics.
I'm sorry, Mr. McManus. Do you remember it being the case where we had to advertise for the specific amount that was under consideration?
Correct.
Yeah.
It was almost like an order language.
And that's not to say that we can't, after having a public hearing and allowing the public to speak, we could always amend and adjust the rate that we set. But we do have to advertise it with a specific rate. Previously, the hearings were held in Ordinance Committee. We actually have a pretty busy summer already, and so I don't think that we would be able to take it up in time for the August 3rd meeting. So I would recommend either a special meeting of the City Council or a special meeting in advance of the August 3rd meeting. Councilor McGivern does want to be recognized to speak. Councilor McGivern.
Just, Mike, thank you for bringing the numbers to our attention. Could you, if you already said it, I apologize, I missed it, but can you just tell us where we stand with unpaid bills, overdue bills?
I don't have that number in front of me. I know we have been making more collections because we've sent out our first round of shut-off letters. So we did see an increase in collections coming in.
Okay, so that will be the water shut-off?
Yep.
Water shut-off for non-payment of sewer, yes.
Okay, that was my second question, so thank you for answering the second question. And the rate that you're proposing, 93%, obviously is a good collection rate, knowing the history of bills in this department. Can you give us what percentage this past year has been like?
The past year it didn't deviate too much less than the 93%. And even when we were doing the shut-off program, it was still, it was like 94.7% was our collection rate.
And is any money coming in on liens that have been placed on property?
Yes, we do get money turned over regularly when payments are made or buildings are sold.
Thank you.
Certainly, if the city forecloses on a property, then we forfeit the lien. But if a property is sold, we are able to collect on the lien at that point in time. And anybody that's connected to the sewer pays a sewer bill, regardless of their tax status, if they're nonprofits, if they're school department, or even we get a sewer bill for City Hall every quarter that we pay.
You got to watch that mayor, though. He doesn't like to pay those bills too timely.
Well, it's in DPW's budget, so.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I understand the issue of the public hearing. I know the City Council already voted to put this here, but going back to my order, if we're starting this process, then I'd like to go to the order returning the rate process to the DPW, who can do it in a much more timely fashion.
If I could just.
Sure, Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree that the commission could do it in a more timely fashion, but I'm not sure it would be a more public fashion. So that would be my concern there. I think we get the same information, and I know we have more political concerns than the commission might have. But I do think it's important that we do it. It's in front of everybody. I mean, I know people know that, I put this out there and the superintendent has given me some figures. I know people have talked about what it would impact. I understand Councilor Bartley's concern, and that's the reason I tried to work with bond counsel to keep the cost down while making sure the deficit is eliminated. But whichever way we go, I think it's important that we do it, and we do it soon. I would say if we advertise, if I'm correct, if we advertise the 805 rate and we had the public hearing and we came away with coming out with a 777 rate, That's not easy to say. You know, that would certainly listen to the public if that were the case. It's crucial. I mean, having done, you know, this one planned budget and seeing what the impact was for the sewer deficit in terms of all of that planning, we need to get this rectified. I think the council has that ability to do that. The council has the ability to make sure the public's aware of what we're doing. Would it be as easy? No, it would not, I don't think, because there'll be more political stuff. But I think that's part of our job, is to make sure we're taking care of the businesses that need to be taken, the enterprise that needs to be done, and we're also trying to have concern for the ratepayers. So it's a combination, and whichever way we go, though, we need to act. Thank you.
Councilor McGivern.
I agree with everything Mayor Murphy is saying, but need to take it one more step. Is yes, we can do all that, but we don't have control over the budget. The Sewer Commission does, and that's the problem with separating the rate setting to the City Council without setting the budget to the City Council, and that's why I filed that order, because it's banging heads together, and there's two sides to every part of a budget. We're only looking at one side, and that's the revenue coming in, whereas the rest of the city budget, as you know, we look at both sides, the expenses after the revenue comes in. But if we have no say over the budget, which we don't, and I realize a big part of it is the debt, the payment back of debt that's owed, but a big part of it is the contract, which we have little annual say over it, no matter who we are. But as an enterprise fund, to set the rate and not be able to vote on what goes on in that plant, to me, doesn't make sense.
I think that I think that the thing to do is we want to set the public hearing, but I'm not sure what to do with the order in order to create the public hearing.
Well, I think if we do a public hearing, it's got to be with the rate, right? So
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to move it out of committee so that it's before the full city council and we can set the hearing that way. I mean, maybe it is just, because all we can do is advertise a committee meeting unless the mayor wants to call the special meeting. So I'm a little bit unclear about what to do at this moment. I do see Attorney Bissonnette raising his hand, so we'll recognize Attorney Bissonnette.
Give us the right answers, Mike.
I think we certainly need to call a special meeting.
Attorney Bissonnette, I just want to say that you're coming across a little bit low for us, so if you don't mind just speaking up or speaking closer to the microphone, that would help.
How's that, a little better?
Better.
Yes, thank you.
The EPA requires that whoever sets the rate conducts the public hearing. So it can't be delegated to a lesser body, the Ordinance Committee, for example, or subcommittee. Have to be the entire council as the rate set. Should the ordinance change and it get back to the Board of Public Works, then that particular entity would have to
So then is the motion then that we refer to the mayor and allow the mayor to set the special hearing?
I would act on recommending it be approved and sent to the mayor for scheduling in the city council. If that's what you want to do, or you can just ask the mayor to set the city council. He doesn't really, he can do it on his own.
So could we, if I could?
Please, go ahead, Councilor Murphy.
Could we, Attorney Bissonnette, could we be in a situation where the committee sends to the full city council the recommendation to conduct a public hearing at whatever rate, I'm suggesting the 8:05, and then on August 3rd that would be received, and then potentially I could call a special meeting if need be to have a public hearing on the rate?
We don't need, if the ordinance committee has the public hearing, we don't need to have another public hearing. We just need to forward a recommendation to the full council. So we could hold the, a mini public hearing in advance of the August 3rd meeting.
Yeah, I think we'd want to make sure we give the public plenty of time. So, I mean, based on I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people talking about it. So, but if we can do it and make a recommendation, and then we can have either the ordinance committee have a public hearing, unique to this particular item, if you will, so that we can make sure the public has plenty of time for input, and then that recommendation would go before the council.
So we are set to meet on the 27th, and our schedule is very full that evening, and it's a joint hearing, series of joint hearings with the planning board. So, I mean, it could be on the 20th,
Yep.
And it'll just be dedicated to the one item,
Yep.
one hearing.
Yep, that would be fine with me.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
We don't have enough time to notice for the 20th?
And why didn't you get it there? Okay.
Yeah. So then, I mean, we could also hold a meeting on the 21st,
21st, 22nd?
21st or the 22nd, or even the 26th, the day before.
Would that give us enough time, Jeffrey?
2 weeks notice, 1, 2. We would be able to do it for if you noticed it on the 8th, we would be able to do it on the 27th, technically. Please, yes.
So today would have been the deadline to get it noticed in the paper for this Friday and next Friday. So next Tuesday, the 6th, would be the deadline for the 9th and the 16th. The 16th is less than 7 days before one of those dates.
So we're looking at the last week of July. We could notice for the 28th.
The 26th, it's a DGR meeting, so 28th or 29th.
Mm-hmm.
That one item on it, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's motion to table and set a public hearing for the 28th of July.
Second.
Can you check the calendar to see if we have anything? We could also start early. We could start at 5:30.
Right now, I only have a meeting for the 26th and the 27th. The finance chair plan to use one of those days?
We'll meet early so that finance can meet. We'll share the date with you. How about that? Right. So the 28th. Thank you.
Okay, so we're
tabling
the rate setting to hold a public hearing on the 28th
Yes.
of July.
Yes. Why don't we set it for a 6 o'clock hearing, and then if Councilor McGivern wants to do finance following that, there's a little bit of flexibility in the timing for. So set the public hearing for 6 instead of 6:30. Okay. All right, so that is for
Item 3.
item number 3 in particular. And then do we want to table the others until we actually have that conversation?
Yeah, I'll make a motion we table item 1, 2, and 4.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to table items 1, 2, and 4 for further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. That's 3-0 vote. We are now up to item number 6, filed by Councilor Tallman.
I'll make a motion to take up item number 6.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, item number 6 by Councilor Tallman reads that the ordinance section 12-4 flags of the city of Holyoke be amended to include the new regulations for flying the POW flag. And he submitted some information here.
I pulled that from the Department of Defense website.
Okay, so our administrative assistant provided some guidance for us. Thank you. Councilor Tallman did call me earlier to discuss this, but I was unavailable, and then we had the special meeting before this, so I wasn't able to get much from him. What we see as the new protocol for flying the Palmia flag is that the Palmia flag is flown below the U.S. flag. Generally, it is not displayed with other flags. The Palmia flag is generally not included in a color guard. It is flown next to the U.S. flag, i.e. on a separate pole. It should be on the U.S. flag's direct left. The Palmia flag should be flown on, and here are the following days: Armed Forces Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day, Independence Day, National Palmia Recognition Day, and Veterans Day. The Palmia flag flies continuously over the White House, the Capitol Rotunda, the Korean War Veterans Memorial, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the World War II Memorial, each national cemetery, and buildings containing the offices of the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Secretary of the Selective Service System, each military installation, and each U.S. Post Office. So the order is just asking us that we adopt the updated regulations, which will need to be brought into legal form. Under discussion, I saw Councilor Murphy raise his hand.
Yeah, and I checked, when I saw the order, I did check, and we are flying it below the United States flag. But I think it's been continued, and that, when I saw all these that are flown on these days, I was under the impression we could leave it out there, but I'm not sure now after reading this. So is it to be flown only during those particular days, or can it be flown below the American flag throughout the year? No?
The way that I read this is that it can be flown continuously below the U.S. flag, but on these days, yep, it's flown next to the flag on the pole to the U.S. flag's direct left, so it becomes equal in stature on those dates.
Okay. So, okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So we are saying that, excuse me.
Bless you.
So we're saying, for example, on 4th of July, it should be on a separate pole at the same height. Yeah, I didn't think so either.
What is that?
I think the regulations are that nothing is ever the same height as the U.S. flag.
It doesn't say.
I think that's
it doesn't say
general.
the height here, but it does say it is flown next to the U.S. flag on a separate pole to the U.S. flag's direct left, and so I would imagine that on these specific days it's elevated to the position of equal stature. But we can check, and that's why we have, our legal counsel here to give us some guidance on the regulations. And I'm sure that they're going to refer to whatever state or national guidelines from the Department of Defense. Is there a motion or any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we do it right.
Well, I think we just need to ask our legal counsel to draft us something that says what we need to do with clarity, and that is according to the protocol, and then we can review it the next time through.
Okay. So can we send this to legal for verifying just, okay, we're not creating an ordinance, we're just trying to follow the federal procedures, correct?
Yes.
We're updating.
Well, we need to
procedure.
update our local ordinances to reflect the changes at the federal level regarding the Palmia flag.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion to send to legal for drafting.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to refer to legal for an accurate and clear local ordinance to reflect the protocol for flying the Palmia flag locally. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. That's a 3-0 vote. You got all that, Attorney Bissonette? Thank you.
You're still happy on the job? You didn't smile. That's not good. Did you catch that, Mike? Are you still happy on the job?
Well, I've only been here 2 days, Mr. Mayor.
That's true. And I haven't given you any grief yet.
That's only because my phone just got hooked up. But that's okay. I'm sure I'll hear from you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to take up item 7.
There is a motion to take up item number 7.
Second.
As the maker's not here, I wonder if we should just leave it on the table.
Yeah, I make a motion we leave it on the table
Second.
until next meeting.
Okay. It's already on the table, so we'll leave it there. Is there a motion that we adjourn?
Second. Or aye.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.